My name is Amelia. I'm 25 years old, and if someone had told me that the woman who gave birth to me would one day become the biggest threat to my children, I would have laughed in disbelief. I grew up believing that no matter how difficult life became, a mother's love was supposed to be unconditional. I was wrong. The day my own mother looked my twin boys in the eyes and told them they weren't welcome on our family cruise was the day she stopped being my mother in every way that truly mattered. What she didn't know is that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Let me tell you how everything happened. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, with my husband Ethan and our 6-year-old twin boys, Noah and Liam. They're identical in appearance, but completely different in personality. Noah is quiet, thoughtful, and always asks questions about everything. Liam is fearless, energetic, and somehow manages to make everyone around him smile, even on their worst days. They are my entire world. When I married Ethan 3 years earlier, I thought I had finally found the peaceful family I'd always dreamed of. Ethan came from a warm, loving home where people hugged each other for no reason, celebrated every tiny success, and never measured love by money. My family was the exact opposite. My mother, Victoria, believed appearances mattered more than people. She judged everyone by the size of their paycheck, the brand of their clothes, and the neighborhood they lived in. If someone couldn't improve her image, they simply didn't matter to her. Even after I became an adult, she never stopped reminding me that I wasn't living the life she had planned for me. "You could have married a millionaire," she'd often say. Instead, I married a school teacher who loved me more than anyone ever had. To me, that was worth far more than any fortune. For years, I tried to keep peace between my family and my mother. I convinced myself that she would eventually soften, especially after becoming a grandmother. But she never truly accepted my boys. She always found subtle ways to make them feel different. At birthdays, she'd buy expensive gifts for my cousin's children while handing Noah and Liam matching sweaters from the clearance rack. During holidays, she'd take family photos without calling my boys over until the last minute. Whenever anyone noticed, she'd smile sweetly and pretend it was an accident. I saw through every fake smile. Still, I stayed quiet. I kept telling myself they were too young to notice. I was wrong about that too. One evening, Noah climbed into my lap after a family dinner. "Mom," he whispered, "does Grandma love us less?" My heart shattered. I hugged him tightly. "What makes you think that?" He looked down at his little hands. "Because she smiles differently at the other kids. Children notice everything." That night I cried after both boys fell asleep. Ethan wrapped his arms around me. "You don't have to keep exposing them to this." "I know," I whispered, "but she's still my mother." Sometimes we hold on to people simply because of who they're supposed to be, not because of who they actually are. A month later, my mother announced that she wanted the entire family to celebrate her 60th birthday with a luxury Caribbean cruise. She rented the largest family suite on the ship and insisted everyone attend. "It's going to be unforgettable," she declared proudly during Sunday dinner. Everyone clapped. Everyone smiled. Even my boys became excited. "Mom," Liam shouted on the drive home, "can we see dolphins? And giant ships?" Noah asked. Ethan laughed. "I think we'll see both." For the first time in months, I saw genuine excitement on their faces. I promised myself nothing would ruin this trip. The following weeks were filled with preparations. The boys watched videos about cruise ships every evening. They packed tiny backpacks with coloring books, swimsuits, toy dinosaurs, and matching sunglasses. Liam insisted on bringing a pirate hat. Noah carefully wrote a list titled "Things I Want to See." Watching them count down the days made my heart full. Then everything changed. 3 days before departure, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice sounded strangely cheerful. "Amelia, darling." "Hi, Mom. I've been reviewing the guest list." Something about those words immediately made me nervous. "And?" "I've decided the twins shouldn't come." Silence. I honestly thought I had misunderstood. "What?" "The boys are too young. They'll make too much noise. They'll ruin the elegant atmosphere." I felt my chest tighten. "Mom, this is a family cruise." "Exactly. And someone needs to stay home with the children." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You invited every other grandchild. Well, she sighed dramatically. They're older. My boys are 6. They're mature. They're excited. They've been counting the days. She sounded completely unmoved. I'm sure they'll get over it. That sentence changed something inside me. I looked toward the living room. Noah and Liam were sitting on the floor coloring pictures of cruise ships. Completely unaware. Completely innocent. I lowered my voice. They're coming. No, my mother replied coldly. I'm paying for this vacation. My rules. If you insist on bringing them, don't bother coming. The call ended. I stood frozen in my kitchen. Ethan walked in. What happened? I couldn't even answer. I simply handed him the phone. When I finally managed to speak, tears were already running down my face. She banned our boys. His expression darkened instantly. Then we don't go. It isn't that simple. Yes, it is. I wanted it to be. I truly did. But deep inside, part of me still hoped my mother would apologize. That she'd realize how cruel she'd been. Instead, the next morning she sent photos in the family group chat. Designer luggage. Luxury excursions. Private dining reservations. Underneath she wrote, "Can't wait to celebrate with everyone who's attending. Everyone. Except my children." My relatives started responding with heart emojis and excitement. Not one person asked where Noah and Liam were. Not one. That hurt almost as much as my mother's decision. Later that afternoon my aunt called. Amelia. I heard about the boys. Finally, I thought. Someone understands. Instead, she sighed. You know how your mother is. Maybe just leave them with Ethan's parents. It's only 1 week. 1 week? To a child, 1 week feels like forever. Especially when they're being excluded by their own grandmother. I politely ended the conversation. That evening the boys ran into the kitchen. Mom, when do we pack the snacks? Before I could answer, Liam noticed my face. Why are you crying? I knelt beside them. Every word felt impossible. Sweethearts, the trip has changed. Noah looked worried. What do you mean? I swallowed hard. Grandma doesn't want children on the cruise. Liam frowned. But cousin Emma is going. I had no answer. Noah quietly asked the question I feared most. She means us, doesn't she? I couldn't lie. I nodded. Neither boy cried. That somehow hurt even more. Noah simply folded the cruise drawing he'd been working on. Liam slowly removed the pirate hat he'd been wearing around the house for days. Without saying another word, they walked upstairs together. The silence they left behind was louder than any scream. That night, I stood outside their bedroom door and heard Noah whisper to Liam, "It's okay. Maybe Grandma just forgot she has grandsons too." At that exact moment, something inside me broke forever. I wiped away my tears, walked downstairs, opened the old fireproof box my late grandfather had entrusted to me years earlier, and stared at the sealed envelope he had made me promise never to open unless my mother gave me a reason. For the first time in my life, I realized that reason had finally come. I sat at the kitchen table long after everyone had gone to bed, staring at the sealed envelope my grandfather had left in my care. I had promised him I would only open it if I ever believed my mother's greed had become more important than her family. Back then, I couldn't imagine such a day ever coming. Now, after hearing my 6-year-old son wonder if his grandmother had forgotten she even had grandsons, I knew that day had arrived. My hands trembled as I carefully broke the seal. Inside were several legal documents, a handwritten letter, and the business card of my grandfather's longtime attorney, Mr. Harrison. I unfolded the letter first. My dearest Amelia, it began. If you're reading this, then your mother has chosen money or pride over love. I prayed this letter would never be needed, but I know Victoria better than anyone. Tears filled my eyes. I never trusted her to handle what I built. That is why, years ago, I changed my estate plan. The majority of my assets are protected in a family trust. The trustee has full authority to decide whether Victoria receives her inheritance, but only if she continues to treat her family with kindness and fairness. I stopped breathing for a second. I read the sentence again. The trustee is you. I couldn't believe it. Grandpa had never mentioned this to anyone. The next page explained everything. My grandfather had spent decades building a successful chain of marinas along the East Coast. Everyone assumed my mother would inherit everything because she was his only child. But after seeing how she treated employees, relatives, and even me growing up, he quietly placed most of his fortune into a trust. He feared that unlimited wealth would only make her cruelty worse. Instead, he gave me the responsibility of protecting the family's future. There was one final condition. If my mother deliberately harmed or discriminated against direct family members for selfish reasons, I had the legal authority to suspend her inheritance and redirect those assets to future generations, including my children. I leaned back in my chair, completely stunned. This wasn't revenge. This was exactly what Grandpa had prepared for. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison. After introducing myself, I explained everything that had happened. There was silence on the other end. Finally, he said, "Amelia, your grandfather described this exact kind of situation years ago." "What do you mean?" "He told me Victoria would eventually reveal who she truly was. He hoped you would never have to make this decision." We arranged to meet that afternoon. Mr. Harrison reviewed every message my mother had sent. He listened to the recordings Ethan had accidentally captured during a previous family dinner, where my mother openly called my boys embarrassing baggage. He read statements from relatives who admitted she intentionally excluded Noah and Liam. When he finished reviewing everything, he closed the folder. "You have more than enough evidence." I looked at him quietly. "So, what happens now?" He adjusted his glasses. "If you choose to enforce the trust, Victoria loses immediate access to nearly 90% of the inheritance." I whispered, "Do it." There was no anger in my voice, only peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't protecting my mother's feelings. I was protecting my children. 3 days later, the cruise departed. The family filled social media with smiling photos, expensive dinners, and sunsets over the ocean. I ignored every picture. Instead, Ethan surprised the boys with a weekend beach trip just 2 hours away. We built sandcastles, collected seashells, ate ice cream, watched dolphins swimming near the shore. As I watched Noah and Liam laugh together, I realized something important. Children don't remember luxury. They remember love. On the 4th day of our beach vacation, my phone rang. It was Mr. Harrison. "The paperwork has been finalized." I thanked him. An hour later, my mother's cruise vacation came to an abrupt end. Apparently, she had attempted to access funds for a private shopping excursion at one of the ports. Her account had been frozen. Then came the official email from the trust. She wasn't simply denied access to the money. She was informed that, under the trust's conditions, her inheritance rights had been suspended pending review by the trustee. I later learned she screamed so loudly in the ship's guest services office that security had to escort her away. The cruise she had dreamed about became the most humiliating week of her life. The moment she returned home, my phone exploded with calls. I ignored every single one. Then my uncle left a voicemail. "Amelia, your mother says you've stolen her inheritance." I almost laughed. You can't steal something that never belonged to someone in the first place. The next morning, my mother showed up at my front door. She pounded so hard that Ethan stepped outside before I could. "I want to speak to my daughter." "You can," Ethan replied calmly. "But you'll speak respectfully." She stormed inside the moment I opened the door. "How dare you? You had no right." I remained seated. "No right to what?" "My inheritance." I slowly placed Grandpa's letter on the coffee table. "It was never yours." Her face turned pale. "What is this?" "The truth." She read the first page, then the second. With every line, the confidence disappeared from her face. By the time she reached Grandpa's signature, her hands were shaking. "This can't be real." "It is. You manipulated him." I looked directly into her eyes. "No, you did that all by yourself." For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "Give it back." I couldn't believe those were her first words. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I miss my grandsons." Not, "I made a mistake." Just, "Give it back." That told me everything I needed to know. I stood up. You know what hurts the most? She remained silent. My boys didn't ask why they couldn't go on the cruise. They asked what they had done wrong. She looked away. I continued. They thought they weren't good enough. You made two little boys question their own worth because they didn't fit the image you wanted. For the first time in my life. She had no excuse. Only silence. I won't argue with you, I said. The trust stays exactly as Grandpa intended. She stared at me. So that's it? I nodded. That's it. She walked toward the door before turning around one last time. You'll regret this. I smiled sadly. No. The only thing I regret is waiting this long to protect my children. She slammed the door behind her. Months passed. Some relatives stopped speaking to me. Others quietly admitted they wished they had stood up to my mother years earlier. Eventually, the truth spread throughout the family. Many learned about Grandpa's trust for the first time. Several apologized for staying silent when my boys were excluded. I accepted some apologies. Others came far too late. One evening, Noah climbed onto the couch beside me. Mom? Yes, sweetheart. Are we ever going on a big ship? I smiled. Absolutely. A few months later, Ethan and I booked our own family cruise. No drama. No conditions. No one was left behind. When we stepped onto the ship, Noah squeezed my hand. This one feels happier. It is, I said. Why? Because everyone here is wanted. The boys laughed as they raced toward the deck. Watching them, I realized that real wealth isn't measured by bank accounts, houses, or inheritances. It's measured by the people who make you feel safe, loved, and accepted. Before he passed away, Grandpa once told me something I didn't fully understand until that moment. Money reveals character. It doesn't create it. He was right. My mother lost an inheritance because of her choices. My sons gained something far more valuable. A mother who finally chose them first. And if I ever have to choose between protecting someone's pride or protecting my children, I'll choose my children. Every single time.